Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for a video that was surprisingly difficult for me to put together. Today I'm going to be ranking the reinforcements from Star Wars Battlefront 2, and as we all know there's been a lot of changes and additions to reinforcements in this game since it came out in 2017. There have been a ton of new reinforcements added and a lot of nerfs and buffs since this game first came out. So I'm going to be ranking them all from worst to best, including all three eras of reinforcements from the prequels to the originals and through to the sequels. Some of them have been grouped together, such as the aerial troopers, but you'll find out and see it a little bit later on in the video what's happening about that. But anyway, just a quick note before we get this thing started. You might see that the bottom 5 reinforcements, they're not bad reinforcements, but they're just there because they're a bit more situational than others, and some of them though do have some general weaknesses compared to the other reinforcements that are in the game. But these are just my personal preferences, as long as some other really good reinforcements that a lot of people are familiar with and that a lot of people tend to use more than others in this game. So then, let's get this thing started, but before we do, make sure guys to like and subscribe for more Battlefront 2 content, as well as F1, GT Sport and other games. So let's dive straight into it. So then, in at number 19 we have the Ewok. Now, these guys are a nice addition to the game, but overall they are not very powerful compared to the other reinforcements. Their bowcaster doesn't, their bow doesn't do a lot of damage and probably is outperformed by any other blaster. You can charge it up and get a one-hit kill, but this requires some good accuracy and you're leaving yourself pretty exposed in the open while you do so. Its horn ability does enable it to have some extra damage to enemies and it receives less damage as well, but doesn't make too much of a difference when there are a ton of enemies shooting at you. But moving on to number 18 then, we have the Wookiee Warrior. Now, in my opinion, it is a pretty underrated reinforcement, one that's not often used, but it's not very powerful when compared to the other reinforcements. Yes, its overload is very powerful at short range, and its thermal imploder is quite powerful, especially in a corridor of there's a corridor of a lot of enemies, such as the Death Star. It's a really good map for these guys. Obviously it's Grand Slam as well, does disable enemies shooting at you for a short amount of time and knocks them off their feet. But the Wookiee Warrior takes a solid 18th place, but this 18th place could have been any other reinforcement. Its bowcaster though does do a lot of damage when scoped in. You can have the bullets fired vertically rather than horizontally, meaning that more bullets do hit your enemies, dealing a lot of damage, pretty much a 2-hit kill on enemies. So that's why the Wookiee Warrior is at number 18. Moving on to number 17, and we have the Flame Trooper. Now don't get me wrong, the Flame Trooper is very, very powerful, but very situational, as I mentioned earlier. Only really used in short spaces, such as, mainly indoor maps. In outdoor maps it's very, very exposed with its short range weapon. The Flame Trooper obviously having a Flamethrower as its primary weapon, so dealing a lot of damage at short range. It has a Fortify ability which gives the Flame Trooper an extra 100 or 200 health, so you can kind of afford to charge into corridors with your Flamethrower and deal a lot of damage to enemies. Similar to the Wookiee Warrior, it has its Thermal Imploder. Throw that into a corridor of enemies and they will all be set on fire. A really nice way to get a load of kills, but overall a very situational character. So then in at number 16 then we have the Isg Agent. Now another one similar to the Flame Trooper, only really decent in short range maps. Its pistols pretty much outperformed by a lot of weapons, even by infantry weapons. But they do perform at short range. its melee ability is very powerful, as you can see here, and also gives the Isg Agent a little bit of her health back. So very powerful if you can get a melee kill, kill on one or two enemies. Get your health back up to 350, and then charge in again at another corridor. It has another ability which allows you to see enemies through walls. Another nice ability for the Isg Agent. Really good use, especially in the close range maps. This is probably where this character excels compared to the others. Short range combat, meleeing people left, right and centre, and then gaining all of your health back. So which is why the Isg Agents in 16th is not a bad reinforcement, but quite situational. On to number 15 then, a shock one I might think, but the Droidiker takes the 15th spot on the list. Now, don't get me wrong, the Droidikers are very powerful and quite easily, well, it's quite easy to maneuver. Obviously, you can just charge in on an objective and equip your personal shield and maybe make the match go to overtime if needs be. A really good way to capture objectives, just charging in and equipping your shield. Obviously, its overcharge is another powerful ability for the Droidiker, and a lot of these reinforcements have the ability which allows its blasters to do extra damage and not need to cool down. Obviously, the Droidiker's rolling ability just makes it so easy to move around, maybe flank enemies or retreat back if you need to regain some of your health. However, the transformation between rolling and stopping and being able to shoot your enemies can cost you quite a little bit of health if your opponents are ganging up on you. But then on to number 14 and 13, we have the Rebel and Imperial Jump Troopers, the first of the aerial reinforcements. Now I put these two together because they pretty much have the same blaster. The E11 and the A280C are the same blaster, it's just cosmetically differences. They have exactly the same stats, so it's just the appearance that splits these two apart. Both of them have jetpacks, the one that does the long range and the little left-right jetpacks for, just a little bit of small maneuvering. The RPG rocket also does a ton of damage on enemies. Find them in a small corridor or a group of them in an open space, and it can deal a lot of damage to your opponents. So both of them take 13th and 14th on the ranking list. If I was to put one above the other, I'm not sure I really can. Both the blasters are the same. But in at number 12, we have the Super Battle Droid, Battle Droid, but the aerial version of it as well. Now I've put this one ahead of the Rebel and Imperial aerial classes because its blaster does do a little bit more damage at longer ranges. Short range, they're fairly similar. And also the Super Battle Droid doesn't really have much of a head. It does have a head, but the hitbox is much lower, so more likely to not get headshotted. So it feels like you have more health. These guys used to have 340 health, but after the Scarif update got reduced to 240, making them a little bit less OP, but still very powerful. And then on to number 11, we have the Resistance Aerial Trooper. Now this one just goes ahead of the Super Battle Droid. The Super Battle Droid does feel a little bit slow compared to these guys, and these guys' blasters have have arguably one of the best aerial assault blasters in the game. Also, the same blaster that Finn has is really good at long range. So then, quickly into number 10, we have the Clone Trooper, or the Clone Rocket Trooper, sorry. One that's pistol is very, very powerful. Not too good at long range in terms of damage, but is still very accurate, and you can easily kill your opponents quicker than you might suspect. The same abilities as pretty much all the aerials, but we'll get onto that in a minute. The thing that separates this clone from the other rocket troopers is probably its primary weapon, its pistol, doing a lot of damage, especially at short to medium range combat. So, on to number 9 then, and we have the Evisium Gunner. This might be a surprise to a few people to see this guy in 9th place, but when the Rise of Skywalker update came out, this guy was the best reinforcement in all of Battlefront 2 without a shadow of a doubt. His primary weapon is a minigun, and when he first came out, you could press the trigger and his blaster would fire straight away. But now you do have to charge up and kind of walk yourself into the fight rather than charging in first and then firing. You kind of got to prepare yourself for the fight, as you can see here, turning around, equipping the defensive stance, and then melting enemies in a matter of seconds. So this guy kind of a bit more tactical than some of the other reinforcements, but its abilities are really powerful. Extra health is always a bonus in large game modes such as Galactic Assault, and its charge ability makes it really useful when on a 1v1 situation with another infantry. Moving on to number 8 then, and we have the Kafek Spy, one who was not too powerful compared to the other reinforcements when he first came out. It was quite rare to see this guy on the battlefield when the Rise of Skywalker update came out, which brought the Kafek Spy into Star Wars Battlefront 2. But its abilities have been tweaked slightly, and the damage to his pistol has changed. Some people think it's a pistol that you have to spam R2 or RT on whatever console you're playing on, but it is an automatic pistol, which is some people, I'm not sure, really know that about this guy. I'm often seeing a lot of people shoot quite slowly with him. I don't think they realise it's an automatic pistol, but his abilities are fairly decent. Base 350 health with an orbital strike, great for clearing out enemies in game modes such as Galactic Assault, or even blast in maps such as Crate, Takodana or Starkiller Base. Fire one of these into an objective and it's pretty much cleared out the area. You can see here getting a few kills with the orbital strike. Its other abilities come with a baton, really good for one-on-one combat, getting some cheap melee kills to close range enemies. Similar to the Commando Droid, but not as powerful. You get 3 strikes with this, and that is enough to kill an enemy on full health. On to number 7 now, and a reinforcement that has had so many updates, so many nerfs, so many fixes, so many changes that it's hard to keep track of what's going on nowadays. That is the Arc Trooper. Now, when these guys first came out into Battlefront 2, they were the most OP thing to touch the ground. You could melt heroes and tanks, anything, in a matter of seconds. However, their pistols have been changed. They still have the dual pistols, controlled similarly to Palpatine's lightning. One button does one pistol, the other does another. You can change between accuracy or kind of like speed and power. If you change those pistols, you can see they fire at a faster, more rapid rate, but don't have as much accuracy as if you changed it back. Other abilities are the shock grenade, which stuns and disables nearby enemies, and also it's a cheap, easy kill. Get them on the ground and then you can finish them off with a few headshots. Also comes with a scanning ability, which makes you able to see enemies through walls, nearby enemies, and it's a really good reinforcement, especially for close range maps. Now then, on to number 6, just outside of our top 5 in today's list, and that is the most underrated reinforcement in the game, which is by far the B2 Battle Droid. And this reinforcement is probably underrated for its unmemorable abilities. The B2 Battle Droid comes with the rocket launcher, the Fortify, and the Overload ability. Nothing unique among reinforcements. However, it is a really good reinforcement to use. It has 350 base health plus a really good blaster for both close, medium and long range. Its overload is insane and probably the best among the reinforcements. You can quickly melt enemies, heroes and vehicles with it. Its only weakness, I'd say, is its mobility. You kind of really want to keep your enemies at distance. These guys are quite slow compared to the other reinforcements, but are a very good option, very good choice for Galactic Assault and Blast. Even co-op, you can melt enemies in seconds using its overload ability, but just missing out on the top 5 spots in today's list. Now then, on to number 5, we have the Clone Commando, an absolutely insane reinforcement, and how overpowered these guys were when the game first came out. It took EA and DICE about a month to nerf these guys and fix them from the game. You could melt heroes, melt vehicles, and you can still do that today. If you want to melt a vehicle, go ahead. Melt a starship, go ahead. Melt a hero and pull them to the ground. Be my guest. These guys, blasters, definitely made for close range combat. You wouldn't want these in an open, clear field. But these smaller maps, kind of like Naboo and Kashyyyk, really good for the Clone Commando. So satisfying to use, especially in quotes, close quarter combat. Now then, on to number 4, and the best aerial, or the highest ranked aerial trooper is the First Order Jet Trooper. Now, I don't think I need to justify myself as to why this guy is so high, but I'm going to do anyway. Its jetpack is absolutely insane, and you can hover above your enemies for what feels like an absolute age. Its blaster comes with splash damage, so you can easily kill enemies even if you shoot them or near their feet. Its explosive shot also good for clearing enemies indoors and outdoors. It does a lot of damage to them. Really good for clearing out an objective with these guys. Just hovering above the objective and shooting down on your opponents. Now then, on to the top 3, and we have the Commando Droid. So these guys are at number 3. Could have been a little bit higher, but their blasters have recently been nerfed, but they are still a really good blaster for close, medium, and even long range. Their melee strikes are just so good, and you can even kill a hero in a few hits. They're fast, deal high damage, and it's exactly what you want in a melee ability. Their other abilities reveals enemies nearby, and combined with the smoke screen is really what defines the Commando Droid, and it's really good to get out of a sticky situation. It's good for close, medium and range combat, as well as probably the best separatist reinforcement there is in the game. Commando Droid, a very solid reinforcement, and one that I tend to use especially in co-op and galactic assault. So then into number 2 then, just missing out on the top spot, and that is the Death Trooper. And when I started putting this list together, I knew the Death Trooper would be near the top. It's just where it would compare towards the other reinforcements. Now this guy is just so good and is dominant in most areas on the battlefield. It can easily shred other reinforcements, especially when you think about what it's going to be compared to. It's coming up against the Rebel Ewoks, Wookiee Warriors, and Rebel Aerial Troopers. Some really good reinforcements, but nothing compared to the Death Trooper. They are more versatile, and its overload ability is just so good at shredding enemies. After the recent Scarif patch, the Death Trooper can now sprint and have its overload ability enabled at the same time. Its range plus damage is amazing with its new blaster. Compared to the old one, I kind of prefer this one over its old blaster. The old blaster was mainly for short range combat, but this one now compensates for all 3 areas. And its sonic imploder does do a lot of good damage to opponents. Kind of preferred it when it did reveal enemies, but I guess more damage did have to compensate for the reveal of nearby enemies. So the Death Trooper takes a solid 2nd place in the top reinforcements lists. And last but not least, we move on to number 1, the best reinforcement in all of Star Wars Battlefront 2, and that is the Sith Trooper. Now these guys are just absolutely amazing at everything. Their SMG is super powerful in close and medium range combat. Its secondary fire really good at long range combat, similarly to Leia's secondary fire on her pistol as well. These guys come with a grenade which is really good for clearing out a group of enemies, whether it be on an objective or in the tunnels of Star Killer base. Their speed and health ability is super powerful for running away from sticky situations while also gaining your health back. And I never regret picking these guys. They're really good in any situation, so whenever I play as the Sith Trooper, I have no regrets, even if I do end up dying to an infantry class. These guys are just so good. Plus their other ability, their third ability, enables them to see, well, reveals nearby enemies, which is kind of just like the icing on the cake, which is what makes these guys all so the better. So that will bring an end to my reinforcement ranks on Battlefront 2. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any differences in your top 5 reinforcements in the game. Stay tuned for some top heroes as well as the best star cards that I use in the game. But make sure guys to like and subscribe. That's all from me, and until then, I'll see you later. Goodbye, and may the force be with you always.